Dear Diary, today I take the next step in being an ADHD life coach at Indigo Hub. I can't believe it's happening. I want to build, create, and discover a place for us to truly be ourselves. I think this journey will be the Indigo Diaries.
Dear Diary, welcome world to the Indigo Diaries, and welcome back to Series 3, The World Through Our Eyes, with your host, me, Natasha Hickling. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about ADHD through others' experiences. And I'm back in Series 3 after my Series 1 episode, and this is kind of led from Series 1. I've had quite a lot of questions and things from kind of clients, from people that I know, from kind of social media, and I kind of wanted to answer that in this session. So we're back with a Pick My Brain session, questions from you, the audience, or clients, or things that I've noticed and I'm going to bring to here to speak about. And I've had, this is quite close to my heart after obviously my episode when I revealed to the world that I've been diagnosed with autism. And so this week is about the differences and similarities between ADHD and autism. Before we start, I have been procrastinating a lot on this episode this week. And it's because I'm sensory. I've had a lot going on this week. My social battery is very, very low. And I just kind of want to take a minute to just notice that and just say that this is one of the differences. When I was diagnosed with ADHD, I used to get tired, but not this tired. And I've realised with autism, we have a lot of difficulties with sensory, and we do with both. But with autism, it can be quite a lot more. And I am really taking that time. So I've waited till I felt a little bit better. So I'm just going to take that aspect, say, yay, yay me. I took some time off and I'm back today. And because I really wanted to make this episode the best as I could, because it's so close to my heart. So just wanted to take that minute. But before we get started, I just want to say that whatever information I share, either today or any other time, is from past experience or sources. And everyone's experience with these conditions is very unique to them. And I want to mention, because, you know, in this episode where we're going to be talking about the differences, it is going to be very generalized, but obviously everyone's experience is very, very different. So I just wanted to take that moment that if this doesn't match kind of what's going on for you, then that's okay. It doesn't invalidate your experience. It's just that your experience is different, because everybody with ADHD and autism is very, very different. So more than half of the individuals who have been diagnosed with autism also have signs of ADHD. So people that have been diagnosed with autism, also half of the people, so that's 50%, have ADHD. But ADHD is the most common coexisting condition with people with autism. However, on the flip side, a quarter of people with ADHD have signs of autism. So there are some kind of similarities and differences there. And today we're going to be I thought it'd be good to start with kind of similarities and differences. So the similarities, they're both neurodevelopmental conditions, okay, both lifelong. You can't grow out of them. You know, it's still quite in a debate whether it's genetic or it's environmental, but there's a bit of both. And because both kind of conditions affect the nervous system, both focus on interest, movement, language, memory, social, and focusing skills. And a number of scientific studies have shown that both conditions do coexist. However, we still don't really know why. And then when I was starting to do research, because obviously I know my similarities and differences, but then I started to do a bit of research, and I was getting a lot of things that are similar. So things like executive function challenges, flexibility, focus, time management, emotional management, sensory stimuli, RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, interest-based nervous system, impulse control, all these different things. And as I started to do this research, I was like, wow, there's a lot of similarities. There was a lot of similarities. And I've put a Venn diagram that I found, which was really cool, down below. It shows the differences and things. And I was like, wow, there are a lot of similarities. So if there's a lot of similarities, that's why a lot of people either get misdiagnosed or get diagnosed with one and the other one is lost, which is what happened to me. I was diagnosed with ADHD 4 years ago, but I wasn't diagnosed with autism until 2 months ago. So that means it's very hard to kind of see the differences sometimes. And because there are so many similarities. The biggest similarities that I found with myself and kind of the research that I've done is kind of both based on interest, whether that's hyperfocus, focusing, can't focus, higher rates of things like depression, anxiety, OCD, a lot of executive function challenges, RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, special interest, passions, hard switching tasks, hard with stimuli, hard with social differences, very passionate focused, and a lot of other things, to be honest. Okay, so like, like a concentration, hard to focus on what other people think, emotions, all these different things. Now, differences, the main differences, and this is where it got me. There are so many similarities, but are there actual differences? For me, yeah, there are many, many differences with my autism and my ADHD. Kind of the main differences I found and for myself is impulsivity. Shift in attention is more kind of ADHD, where we shift very quickly, versus kind of sustained on one thing. Obviously, with ADHD, we have hyperfocus, but with autism, it's more like a special interest that stays for a long time. And this made me kind of think like, a lot of people with ADHD, we hear that jack of all trades. But people with autism are usually kind of mastery in some, lots of interest versus kind of deeper in kind of some specific areas. But then with ADHD, we have hyperfocus when we're really interested. So it does cross over, but I think the difference is when kind of with autism, when we kind of had that deep specific area, it does stay around for a long time. It doesn't seem to kind of flip and flap, but with ADHD, there seems to be kind of different interests at different time, and we might go off it, we might see something new, and then we get interested in that, and then we get something new. So I find that kind of shifting attention is a lot more with ADHD, but kind of that sustained on one thing for an intense period is more autism. Sensory stimuli, so that affects both. However, I know some people with ADHD that it doesn't affect. With autism, that is 100% there. And I know for me, when I kind of work with people with autism and ADHD, that people that have both, the stimuli is a lot more apparent and a lot more kind of distinct, and in a lot more different areas than just kind of sound or visual. There's a lot more to it. But with some people with ADHD, it might not be as apparent, or it might not be as kind of, I don't want to say severe, but as kind of severity of it, or it might just be in a few areas. That's kind of one. The next one is social challenges and emotional empathy. So, I mean, I know a lot of people with ADHD that kind of really struggle with that, and people with autism that really struggle with that. But with ADHD, I find that, and like I said, this is from experience and things, a lot of people, especially with combined, usually have quite extroverted personalities, want to go out, kind of get beams off social situations. But a lot of people with autism usually kind of like that, but they also like that time by themselves. So social cues, emotional empathy is quite interesting about kind of emotions, and that people think that people with autism don't have empathy. And a lot of people think with ADHD, people don't have empathy. But with, as I've dug more into that, there's different types of emotional empathy. There's kind of cognitive empathy, where we know how somebody feels and then we take actions towards that. But then the somatic and affective empathy is where we feel it, feel the vibes, we might not know it, but we feel it. And sometimes that can be more apparent in autism than it is in ADHD. The biggest one for me is order/flexibility. So people with autism are very strict kind of routines, need organization is a huge need. People with ADHD do need that, but they don't usually like it, or they find it quite difficult because they crave novelty and new experience. And when things change, people with autism can really struggle with that. Sometimes when people with ADHD things change, it's kind of like, okay, what else can I do? And I feel like that is a massive difference. Because usually if we're looking at executive functions, people with ADHD, organization is usually kind of one of the more challenging ones, but with autism, it's usually one of the strengths. Another one is repetitive behavior. A lot of people with autism like the same things. I know I do. You know, I like to do the same. I have repetitive behavior, repetitive speech. I'm very structure orientated, but people with ADHD really get bored easily from all that, so they like to do different things. Another one is kind of conceptual versus detail orientated. A lot of people with ADHD are very big picture thinkers, can see big, and that's where that creativity comes out. But a lot of people with autism are very detail orientated, need to know what's going on at this time or that time, can see very specific things. And as we start to kind of, and I mean, there are only a few things, and I've put a few kind of resources below that kind of do look at different ones. And it's very tricky, because as I started speaking now, I was like, oh, it does overlap. Oh yeah, even when I was speaking about the differences, oh yeah, it does overlap. And that is the common thing, is it does. For me, there are massive distinct differences, but there are so many similarities as well. And kind of, I put a sheet on there that kind of has ADHD kind of challenges and autism challenges. So ADHD, being easily distracted, jumping from one thing to another, difficulty focusing, talking nonstop, blurting things out, hyperactivity, trouble sitting still, interrupting conversations. But then I kind of say, oh, what about stimming? What about that? What about when you're not interested? And it says autism challenges, unresponsive to common stimuli, lack of an ability to react to other people's emotions, repetitive movement, avoid eye contact, withdrawn behavior, social interaction, delayed developmental milestones. But then I think, wow, wait a minute, some of that is with ADHD. So right now we're talking about kind of surface level. And after the break, we're going to go a bit deeper into how can we really tell what the difference is and how we can meet the needs of both, if we have both, or if we don't, how do we work out if we have one or the other, or both? So stay tuned, and we're out.
If you would like any more information on Indigo Hub or our Indigo support group, then please check out our website below, or our link to our social media platforms, or email at indigohub.adhd@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments, feedback, get support, or if you're interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out through any of our avenues. As said before, have a positive week. Check in again later. And we're out.
And we're back. So before we were kind of talking very surface level about the comparison of the two conditions and the differences and similarities. But as we started to speak, I realized that there was a lot more to it than meets the eye. And I started a bit more research, and it said the way we notice the difference between the two is not understanding what we see, but understanding what's beneath the surface. So if we think about kind of an iceberg, right, what I was talking about there was kind of the things on the top. What about the things underneath? Why does it happen? What are the reason and cause behind the behavior that we see? And I thought that's really interesting. So for example, both can cause social difficulties, right? But some people with ADHD, the root cause of that is usually inattentive. The inattention to kind of organize the thoughts, impulsivity, kind of struggling to keep up with the conversation. People with autism, the reason can be a bit different. It can look like social challenges, but it can be things like not understanding nonverbal communication, delay in kind of what's happening in the language, not really understanding the unspoken rule. A bit like when I said about stimming. People with autism, it might be repetitive movements. That's what the stimming is. it looks like movement, but the cause could be because it's repetitive and needs stimulation. But people with ADHD, it might be the hyperactivity. As we kind of see here, reasons why, right? So people with ADHD, about kind of people's emotions and empathy, it might be that we're just not paying attention to that because our attention is somewhere else. But people with autism, it might be because we find it really hard to kind of distinguish what their emotion is. But overall, it looks like emotions. And that is what made me really, really think. It is more of what's going on underneath the surface than what displays the surface. So for people like with autism, sometimes emotional dysregulation can actually be sensory overload. Those people with ADHD, it usually, quite a lot of the time, is emotions. But it looks like meltdown. And that's the key thing here, is what's underneath the surface. What is the cause or the reason why that behavior or challenge or symptom or whatever you want to say is. So I put a post out recently, because my coach, because as I've been trying to work out the difference between both, my coach mentioned to me that he said it was like having kind of two teenagers in your mind, right? They're both teenagers, they're both there, they're both part of you, but they've also got distinctive characteristics that are different. And we, like myself, is like the mum that's trying to kind of get them both to work together. And it just resonated with me so much because my ADHD and autism do cross over, but they both have very distinctive needs and their own personality based on what I said about the cause. So my autism needs structure, but my ADHD likes fun, right? My ADHD needs different types of things, needs spontaneity, but my autism likes the same. My ADHD likes to go out and be extroverted and socialize, but my autism gets really overstimulated by that and likes time by itself. My autism likes to stay at home. My ADHD wants to go out and explore new places. My autism likes structure. My ADHD likes to blow off structure and do different things. But if you look at that, it looks the same, but it's very, very different because the cause of what's going on is very different because they're both conditions by themselves. But how they play together, because they're both in your mind, there are similarities, but there are differences. And it's just about trying to kind of think, what do I need? What do they both need? So when I say that, yeah, I like constant excitement, yeah, but I need to plan that excitement and have rest in between because then I'm looking at both, right? I can have the same things in my life, but then spontaneity on top. I can go out and do the social world, but I need breaks, sensory breaks, calming music, ear loops, and all those things. So I can do that. I can stay at home, and then when I feel like it, I work from home. But then when at the weekends, I can go and explore days when I feel like doing it, and I might go and explore, but might do research in order to get there. So what I'm doing there is combining both my needs and figuring out my own way of doing it, and that's what it is. There is so much about looking at kind of what they are by themselves. But what about what they are together to you? There are many differences, there are many challenges, and there's not any right or wrong answer here. But my kind of thing to you is look at what's going on and then think about why that's happening. What's the cause of that? If you're going out socializing, is it because you're not paying attention? Or is it because you're really struggling to understand what's going on? If you're at home and you're trying to figure out how to do your university plan, is it because you haven't got any structure, or is it because you find it really hard to do the structure? And that's the thing, the same thing, but the cause can be very, very different. So if you suspect that you have both, why not go and find out? Because there could be a whole side of you that's missing out. Because I know for me there was. I was doing really well at managing my ADHD, but I was still getting tired. Because there was another part of me that I wasn't meeting their needs. And now it's about how do I meet my needs that incorporates both of them. I've put some resources below if you do think that you have both and that you want to reach out and try and get help. If you do have both and you just kind of wanted to listen to this to kind of figure out the differences, then please share your story, because I'm sure that's very, very different to what mine is. So my kind of quote today is, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Knowing yourself is the way that we can learn, we can grow, and we can see the world through not my eyes, but ours. Come back and join me in a few weeks for another guest in series 3. Why not? Have a great week. And we're out.
Dear Diary, as Indigo Hub's process goes on, it makes me stop and wonder, could there be more for us? More light, more experience, and more ways to see the world through our own eyes. I think this journey will be